Hey guys, this is heyybritny and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the movie Shooter and the TV series, so let's go ahead and get into it. Alrighty, so first off, let me just say that I really love political thrillers and government conspiracy movies. I've watched all of the Jason Bourne movies. I love The Fugitive, which is an old 1990s movie, Pelican Brief, and all of these other great movies that I cannot name at this moment. But point being, I really love conspiracy movies and political thrillers, and Shooter is no exception. So I've seen Shooter before. I probably saw it when it first came out, but as you know, they do replay movies on cable TV and all of that stuff. And so Shooter was on, and I just had it on in the background while I was reading, but I actually kept looking up to kind of follow along and see what was happening. And at one point I was just like, okay, let me just stop reading, let me watch the TV, let me turn it up and follow along and just actually watch it until it's all the way over. And I'm really glad that I did that because I really love movies from probably pre-2010. because the quality of the movies are so much better. That was when you were really excited about going to the movies to see the latest movie. You had to wait a while for it to be available on DVD, and movies were just a higher quality than they are now. Now they make a lot of movies that are basically made for TV movies that they're passing off as blockbuster movies that you pay $20 per person to go to the movies to see. We don't get those type of movies anymore. And so Shooter really just brought back the old school feeling of really great, top-notch, well-done movie. And I first came across Mark Wahlberg in the movie Fear. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he pretty much plays that type of like aggressive character in all of his movies, and so that made him perfect for Shooter. With Shooter, I have not read the book, so I don't actually know how true the movie is to the book, but being that I am getting back into reading, I may or may not take a moment to go ahead and read that series. So I want to start by saying, going back to Mark Wahlberg, I think that he really killed this role. He played the soldier image up to perfection. I can't imagine anybody else playing him in the movie. And I do this thing sometimes where I will go and look up and, if I can, find out who else auditioned for the role and could have potentially been playing it, because it makes a huge difference when you know, for example, I'm not 100% sure who was supposed to be in the movie, but I think maybe Tom Hanks or somebody was supposed to be in Jerry Maguire, and that movie would have been completely different if it was Tom Hanks instead of Tom Cruise. And so I'm not sure if I have that actor correct, but let me just do a quick Google search. Yeah, so I was actually correct. It was Tom Hanks who auditioned for that role in Jerry Maguire. I tried to search to see who else auditioned for Bobby Lee Swagger in Shooter, but I don't think I could come up with anything. I also want to say here that I really prefer the name Bobby Lee Swagger than Bob Lee Swagger. I think Bobby Lee just has a different, more aggressive, bad vibe to it than just Bob Lee. That sounds more country. Bobby Lee sounds like, oh, he's gonna do some damage. So I really like Shooter, if you can't tell. So yeah, just going back to the movie. So Mark Wahlberg killed it in the movie. In the TV show, I know that Ryan Phillippe plays Bobby Lee Swagger, and at first I did not think that he was a good choice because I don't see a soldier or like an aggressive man when I look at him, which is not a bad thing. It's just that this role, in my opinion, is not for him. But then I found out that Mark Wahlberg wanted Ryan Phillippe to play the role of Bobby Lee Swagger, and I have to kind of trust his judgment because, one, he was part of the Shooter movie, and he was an executive producer on Shooter, the TV series. So he is the perfect person to say or give opinions on who needs to be involved and who needs to play who and so on. So I trust his judgment in that sense, but I'm not 100% sold on the fact that this was the best person to play Bobby Lee Swagger in the TV series if Mark Wahlberg himself is not available. I also want to call out that I really love seeing Quinn from One Tree Hill on this TV show. I haven't seen her in anything other than One Tree Hill, so that was really good to see her, because you know how actors get typecast and you just see them either in that one TV show or they consistently play the same role over and over. I don't know if I can pronounce her name, Chantal Van Santen, is the actress who played Julie Swagger, again from One Tree Hill. And there were some moments where she was talking and it made me flash back to her character of Quinn in One Tree Hill, because there was this moment where Quinn was complaining about how, or explaining why she and her husband were not working together anymore. And she basically said that he either grew up or he stopped doing like the little things or whatever, and she didn't. And it was just the way that she said it, and then her energy. And there was a monologue that she had basically in Shooter, and it just took me back to that moment. She sounded exactly the same, which is crazy because obviously the actress is going to sound like her normal self, but it just instantly took me back to One Tree Hill. The other thing I want to point out about Shooter, the TV series, is that it is modernized, so you will see a lot of changes from the movie. Again, I have not read the book, so I can't tell you what's different there, but I really like the fact that I was able to watch the movie Shooter and then instantly back to back basically watch Shooter, the TV series. Okay, so Shooter, the TV series came out in 2016 and it went off air in 2018. So I think it makes sense that they modernized it. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of everything that they changed to kind of make it different from the movie so that you're not watching the exact same thing. So they had a lot of character changes, they had a lot of plot changes, and then also generally with doing a TV series, you have more time to tell the story, so you can see why they made some changes that they made just to be able to build out that first season. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Alrighty, so if you are not familiar with Shooter, the plot is basically that a president is killed, Swagger is framed, and then basically he spends the whole movie, the whole first season, proving his innocence, and he works with different people along the way. And basically what he is exposing is that there is a cover-up of government corruption. So let's talk about some of the character differences. So Isaac Johnson is basically the guy from Love and Basketball, Omar Epps, and the character change here is that in the movie, Colonel Johnson was older, and I don't think he had any relationship with Swagger. He just maybe knew of him, whereas in the TV series, he was actually his boss, Swagger's boss in the TV series, and they had a close relationship. There was a friendship there, so the betrayal here is deeper. And Johnson, if you don't know, is the one who set up Swagger to take the fall for shooting the president. And then also, Johnson did work with Swagger and Donnie, just to make that connection clear. The other change is that we have Swagger married in the TV series. In the movie, he was not married and did not have a wife or did not have children, and his love interest was Donnie's widow. In the TV series, he has a wife named Julie and a daughter named Mary. Also, I think that the change of giving Swagger a wife and a child was a good one, because in the movie, the love interest between Swagger and Sarah, Donnie's widow, was very subtle to where they didn't overdo it the way that they normally would do. Like, they would show them making out and being intimate and all of that stuff. They didn't do any of that. They really just focused on the action, which I think was a great move because Shooter is a great action movie. The other change that they made is that in the movie, Donnie is white, and the TV series, Donnie is black, and we have Donnie's mom being killed off by Isaac because she helped Swagger. So that is definitely something that did not happen in the movie. We just heard that Swagger was responsible or felt responsible for Donnie dying, and then he only has a interaction where he only interacts with Donnie's widow. We never hear about Donnie's mother or anything like that. And then the other change, I'm not sure how I feel about this because I think that Nick Memphis in the Shooter movie was phenomenal. We have Memphis as a woman in the Shooter's TV series. Her name is Nadine Memphis. I thought that Nick Memphis was smarter in the movie because obviously we know that he got disarmed by Swagger and he was the butt of the jokes of the place where he worked, the FBI where he worked because of it, and he really worked to redeem himself, and he basically outsmarted everyone else and got to become Swagger's pork or his scope partner, whatever the terminology is. So I thought that Nick Memphis really redeemed himself in Shooter the movie and made himself into like a top FBI agent, whereas in TV series Nadine Memphis, I felt like she was making rookie mistakes. I felt like she wasn't doing the smartest thing when it came to helping Bobby Lee and figuring out everything that was going on. She was just really making rookie mistakes again, and I did not like that for her, being that this was such a strong and good character in the movie. However, it did stay true to the movie where we have Swagger teaching Memphis how to basically be his scoper, whatever it's called, and to learn how to shoot guns and all of that stuff. And so we do see her kind of filling in that traditional role that that character had in the Shooter movie. Okay, so Jack Payne. So I was, the whole time I was watching the Shooter movie, I was trying to figure out who Jack Payne was. I thought it was somebody else and I couldn't picture him. But then I just realized that it was Al from Chicago PD. So I actually Googled and it has a picture of how he looks in Chicago PD. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's Al. That's who it is. Okay, that makes sense because I didn't recognize his voice or anything like that. So I was bummed by that, but I'm usually really good with recognizing faces. And so Jack Payne in the movie was crazy. He was psychotic. He was creepy. In the TV series, he was kind of that, but it was more chilled out, more mellow, and it didn't have the same impact or effect that Jack Payne in the movie had. I also want to give a quick call out, just a spoiler. I really like that they replicated the shot with them in the movie on the mountains with him holding Sarah at gunpoint and getting his hand shot off because he taped it to the gun for whatever reason. And then they replicated that in this TV series. So I really like that they kept a lot of things very consistent to what happened in the movie, but just did a different spin on it. Okay, so now let's get into the plot and the storyline. So they were true to keeping a meeting between Swagger and Memphis. So in the movie, basically Swagger runs into Memphis, he tricks him, disarms him, and then he escapes and he tells him, hey, I'm not the shooter, blah, blah, blah. And then in the movie, we have Swagger meeting Memphis because we know that he's approached and he's asked, hey, if you had to shoot the president, how would you do this? And so he goes and he scopes out all of these different locations. He identifies one location that he thinks the shooter is going to take the shot from, and then he realizes the day of the shooting when he's actually there, like, hey, this is wrong, I made a mistake, because he thought that the person was going to shoot around the flag, but he was just going to drop the flag and then shoot through where the flag was to shoot the president. So he realizes he's wrong. He takes off. He's basically running through the city. He gets to the room where the gun is set up to take the shot. And then we have Timmons trying to, it's actually Payne who is supposed to, in the movie, Timmons was the one who took the shot, but in the TV series, it's Payne dressed up as Timmons, and then Timmons takes the credit. And so we have Swagger basically running out of the room, jumping through the window, landing on the car, and then right there to basically meet him is Agent Memphis, and she arrests him. So I did not like the change of him being arrested right away, because in the movie we know that he escaped and then he's basically on the run. And so here's where they're able to build out the storyline and kind of add more to it. And so we have Swagger getting arrested. He's taken to jail. Everyone knows who he is. He's a high profile prisoner. We can see that Johnson and Payne, they're pulling strings to get him attacked in prison and get him killed off, because obviously they do not want him to talk and say what he knows, because he knows that he was shut up. And so we have this moment where basically he's released into general population. He's supposed to be in solitary confinement, but he's not. He's in general pop. And then as he's about to fight these people, this Russian prisoner who's like a big deal in the prison is like, hey, this guy's under my protection. You're not going to touch him. And this is what saves Swagger, because he would have had to have fought off a bunch of people in order to protect himself in prison. That happened, and then basically he's able to get a connection to help protect his family, but then also he is able to protect himself, call his wife and all of his stuff, and he ends up escaping from prison and he goes on the run. And when he goes on the run, in the movie he goes to Donnie's widow, Sarah, Ben, and then in the TV series he goes to Donnie's mom. And I really liked that he still went to somebody in Donnie's family to help him, because there would have been nobody else that he could have gone to safely without getting in trouble, without having them turn on him, which I thought was really interesting, because if you know his character, you should know that he didn't do it, or he wouldn't do something like this, because there's a few people that he went to who did not believe that he was innocent. So anyway, he goes to Donnie Fenn's mother's house, and she helps him. She knows, like, hey, you didn't do this, I'll do whatever I have to do to help you. And Isaac somehow figures out that he went there. He goes to confront Donnie's mother, and what's his name, Swagger's still in the house. He gets the bike and he leaves. So I don't know if they know that he's traveling on the bike, but they just know that he's there. And then what happens is, Isaac is basically told, like, hey, you need to kill Donnie's mother. She knows too much. She's a threat to us, and he's the one who has to kill her. Then next up, what we have happening is Willie Swagger is on the run. He's trying to figure out who the shooter is, and so he ends up going to his former sniper instructor's house. He is basically having a conversation about who else could have taken that shot other than him. And we do see this in the movie. This is when they go to that guy's house who's in the wheelchair, and he's a little creepy sounding and all of that stuff. And basically this is a guy who knows different shooters, knows different guns and all of that stuff. And he's basically having the conversation of trying to figure out who else they could have gotten to make this shot in order to frame him as being the one who did it. They have a conversation about the Black King, which is a special type of rifle that only had a certain number made. I believe it's 4, and it's a play on the card deck, the 4 kings and all of that stuff. And the instructor has one of the Black Kings, so he needs to find the other 3. And what I want to call out about this scene is that this is a different approach to the conversation, because it's combining 2 things. It's combining Swagger and Memphis going to that gun guy's house in the movie, and then it's also combining when they confronted the shooter and they had to fight off those 24 people that were sent there to kill Swagger. This is where we have Swagger and O'Brien, who is the sniper instructor. They have to fight off a team of, I think, 10 or 12 people in the woods, and so they were able to take them out. The instructor got shot in the leg. Then we have Swagger coming to the rescue and killing the guy who's about to kill the instructor, and then the instructor gives him the Black King gun to take with him. And one thing I want to call out is that in this scene, we do have the shooter being identified as Lon Scott, I believe, and I can't recall how exactly O'Brien knows about Lon Scott, but Lon Scott basically posted YouTube videos of him taking shots from a far enough distance, indicating that he was the one who took the shot. And we learn later on that this was just bait to lure Swagger into coming after him to figure out what he knows and all of that stuff. And so we have Swagger knowing who the shooter was, and then he is on the run to figure out how he can get to the shooter and expose what's happening here. Okay, so in the movie, we don't really have much interaction between Payne and Memphis, but we know that there's a kind of relationship there just because they've interacted with each other so many times. So at the beginning of the series, we have Memphis going to kind of like make an arrest or whatever, and Homeland Security and the Secret Service, they basically steal or take away the person that she was there to meet, and so she can't get the information that she needs, which is instrumental in identifying what happened as far as why the Ukrainian president was shot and why Swagger was framed. She's run into Payne a few different times. She thinks he is law enforcement, he's on the right side, but he's actually been bought and paid for it, and so he's basically just feeding her the correct information, but also lying to her and misleading her, and she's able to call him out on this, and so he ends up drugging her. He tries to kill her. Swagger ends up saving her, and so this is really where we have Swagger and Memphis working together, because she's realizing that something is not quite right here. So as a result, Payne at some point gets outed. He is arrested by the FBI, and this is a brilliant move because we know that Memphis is starting to suspect that Payne is not who he says he is, and then she ends up going to Julie Swagger's house. Julie is staying with her sister and her brother-in-law, and Memphis tells Julie, hey, do you know anything about this person? And Julie's smart. She takes the files. There's reporters outside, and she says, hey, this is the man we think did it, and she's holding up Payne's picture, so she's making him a person of interest in this case, which will help Bobby Lee, because now they have to kind of investigate who this person is and what he's doing and all that stuff, and this is when Payne turns himself in. We also have this moment where Bobby Lee fakes his death, and he is still alive. Julie's communicating with him, and then the brother-in-law finds her tablet because she left it open. He reads her conversation. He understands what's happening here, and we know at this point that Julie and her sister both know that Bobby Lee is still alive. The brother-in-law did not know, and he's basically threatening Julie about this information because he's upset about how their lives have turned chaotic, because obviously this is his brother-in-law who's being accused of this crime and all of this stuff, but then the wife is staying with him. And so he stupidly goes to the FBI. He speaks to Agent Memphis. Memphis calls Julie to tell her what happened, and then Julie just holds him at knife point and says, "You're an idiot, you shouldn't have done that. My sister would help me dig a hole if she knew what you did." And then she sends him packing. So I really like that she was tough as nails on him in that scene, because the brother-in-law was super annoying and he really could have ruined everything. All it would have taken is for him to go to the wrong FBI agent and everything would have been screwed up. So as a result of Payne getting arrested, going back to when Julie put his picture on blast with the reporters, he basically gives himself up, goes in for questioning, and he ends up mentioning something called Annex B, which is basically the same point that was made in the movie, where there is a contract private military group that is basically committing all of these crimes to pave the way for whoever to make more money. And so Annex B is basically people being killed in a different country so that other people can make money. And so Annex B is basically all of this happening, and they don't want this information to get into the wrong hands, because then they could be exposed and then held accountable for the crimes that they've committed. And so Payne is burnt. He is saved by Lon Scott, who gets him basically pulled out of the FBI's grasp, and then Payne tries to blackmail him. He says, "Hey, I have the files, I want 10 million. Lon says, "Hey, I'm not going to pay you." Then he tries to blackmail the Russian FSB head, which is Greg. I can't say his name correctly, Greg. So he ends up coming to America to deal with this situation. And basically Payne has set up a meeting with the Russians to get 10 million, I guess, in diamonds in exchange for the files. And this is where we have Swagger inserting himself. He's following along with everything that's happening. He's putting the pieces together. And so he ends up somehow, I can't recall how exactly, but he and Memphis break into Greg's hotel room. He's like, "Hey, I'll kill Payne and meet him for you, blah, 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 and Scott, and I'll get rid of them for you." And then he basically tells Lon this information, and then Lon realizes, "Hey, you know, they're trying to kill me. The Russians are trying to kill me." And so basically they have a meet where Payne is supposed to exchange the files for the diamond, and they're all expecting the others to turn on each other. But Memphis and Swagger, they're not able to take the shot because they realize that Johnson is in the car, and wherever they shoot from, that gives away their location, and he's going to shoot at Swagger. So Swagger has to abandon his plans. He goes on foot and he gets closer to the action, and then it's just Memphis basically up in the hills taking the shot and just firing at people. And so Payne unexpectedly is able to get away with both the diamonds and the files, and then we have everybody realizing, hey, this did not go according to plan. We need to get out of here, and so on. And so Swagger is able to track down Payne because there's a tracker in the bag, and he is able to take both the diamonds and the files from Payne. He beats him up a little bit, but then this leads to Lon having Julie and Swagger's daughter Mary kidnapped. So both Julie and Mary are kidnapped to get the diamond and the files from Swagger. So now this is where we have a meeting set up to exchange the files for the hostages. So they're able to figure out where Julie and Mary are being kept, but it's a trap. And so Johnson and Swagger, they go there. They have Memphis outside using something that detects the heat signature. So she's telling them, hey, you know, there's 2 people on this floor, there's 10 people on this floor. And so they think that Julie and Mary are there. They are not. And this is really just a ambush so that Lon can take out Swagger, because he really wants to be the one to kill Swagger. They end up figuring out what's happening. Hey, this is an ambush, and they're able to get out of there before Lon can take a shot. This leads to Swagger going to Lon's house because he's scoped out his house. He knows where he lives. He is able to go to the front gate, say, hey, I'm turning myself in. He's able to break free, shoots everyone, and then he is in Lon's office waiting for him. And I won't reveal what happens here when he's in the office as far as some other stuff that happened, but basically he confronts Lon. He tells him, hey, you know, you're not a real sniper, you just shoot at pumpkins, which is a funny insult because basically this guy is basically shooting people from the comfort of his own location that he picked. Nobody knows who he is, that sort of thing. He's not really taking any real risk, right, is what Swagger is telling him. So he taunts him and he says, hey, you know, we'll meet you at this park. You can pop off shots at me as long as my family is safe. we have this scene where Swagger, Memphis, and Johnson, they're basically talking about what their next steps are. We see Swagger putting together a bullet. We don't really know what's happening with it, but basically there's a certain type of bullet that was used to shoot at the president, and Swagger is able to basically track down the shooter using this bullet and finding out, like, you know, who makes this bullet, who do they sell it to, and then so on. And so he is putting together a bullet. We don't really know what he's doing with it, that sort of thing. He showed up to the park, and we have Johnson and Memphis on the roof. They're scoping out to see, you know, where Lon could potentially be, because again, they're meeting up with Swagger, Julie, and Mary, and then the people who have them, and Lon is going to be somewhere firing off shots to see if he can kill Swagger. So we have Johnson on the roof with Memphis. They're just scoping out, like I mentioned, and they see these two cars, so a van and an SUV. They are basically parked next to each other, and it looks like they're doing some sort of exchange. She doesn't like what's happening, so she follows the SUV, and then the van is supposed to go to the meeting spot. And we have Payne and Julie in the van. There's no Mary in sight. She was put into the SUV. And what we have happening at the park is this is the replication, or this is a adaptation of what happened when they were on the mountains with them making that exchange of information for Sarah. And so in the movie, this scene was brilliant because they pull up to the mountains. It's all white. Everybody is there. They're waiting for Swagger to pull up. They see somebody walking. A sniper shoots that person. He falls. Meacham and Johnson, they think they've done their work or whatever. They hear another shot go off, and it's Swagger killing that shooter who shot at Memphis. And then he takes out a few other snipers, and then he reveals himself. He walks down, and what we have happening is, just before that, what we have happening before Swagger reveals himself is he takes another shot, but he shoots at Payne's arm or hand that is holding the gun that is being used to threaten Sarah. So Payne falls to the ground. We have Swagger walk up. Memphis gets up. He walks up. He's fine. They disarm all of the people. Sarah gets the gun and she shoots Payne, and then nothing really happens from here. Swagger gets arrested and goes to jail. So back to Shooter the TV series, we have Swagger in the park with Payne and his wife. His wife is being held at gunpoint. She has something around her neck, and Payne tells her, hey, you know, if this gun falls, it's gonna go off, you're gonna die, blah, blah, blah. And whatever it is taped to his hand, and then it's around Julie's neck. And so while this is happening, we can see that Lon is firing off shots, and he's missing. And so he fires one shot, I don't know where it lands. He realizes something's wrong with the scope. He adjusts it. He fires a second shot. It's closer, and Julie's like, Swagger, run, protect yourself, save yourself, whatever. He's like, no, trust me. And so he's waiting for something. And so what we see is that, what's his name? Lon Scott, he puts the third bullet in. He aims to take the shot, and then basically the bullet reverse fired. Instead of firing forward, it fired back at him and killed him. And so Swagger knows, hey, I guess he found my bullet. And so he knows that Lon is not a threat anymore. And then we have Johnson is the one who takes a shot to blow off Payne's arm to save Julie. And then we have this moment where Payne is like, oh, you're not gonna shoot me, you're a housewife. And then she's like, no, I'm a Swagger. And then she shoots him. That was a cool line. That was a really great line for Julie at this part of the show. So I was really happy that she just ate with that and then killed him like Sarah did in the movie. Okay, so now going back to the exchange. So we know that it was just Julie in the park. Greg actually took Mary and he took her to the Russian embassy, so they can't get to her. So they have to come up with a plan to get into the embassy undetected to get Mary out so that they can avoid this whole exchange and all of this blowback that they're gonna get if this thing becomes public. So what happens is they make a plan for Julie to go to the Russian embassy, confront the Russian ambassador and say, hey, I'm Bobby Lee Swagger's wife. You guys took my daughter. She's here, blah, blah, blah. She's making a scene. So that Russian ambassador, he makes some calls. He leaves to go back to the Russian embassy. And then we have Swagger pretending to be a security guard. He is wearing this suit that's too big, so it's obvious that he's not the person he's supposed to be. And then he's not able to get in past the metal detectors because they just say senior officials only or whatever. So he's stuck at this point. And at this point, the Russian ambassador has gotten back to the Russian embassy. He's talking to Greg and he's like, hey, you know, what's going on? I don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And so he knows, okay, Bobby Lee Swagger's wife, their child here, blah, blah, blah. He's not going to do anything to end the situation peacefully. And so the ambassador, I don't know what it is, but he ends up looking towards the door and he sees Swagger and he's like, hey, why are you blocking my security guard? Let him through. And so he tells Swagger, hey, I had nothing to do with what's going on. Your daughter's being kept here. Here's the key. Do whatever you gotta do quietly, right? And so he helps Swagger because obviously he's trying to avoid a political scandal. And so then what we see is there's this lady who is a national security advisor, and I think her name is Miss Gregson, and she's basically this tough political Olivia Pope type of figure, and she's like, hey Greg, you have Bobby Lee Swagger's daughter here, you need to let her go. Basically, your hands are tied and you're about to get yourself in a big mess because the headlines are either going to say Russian whatever kidnaps the daughter or so-and-so implicated in a government conspiracy, whatever. And so she's basically telling him, like, you have your choice between two headlines, but one is obviously worse than the other. And so we know that Swagger has made his way into the building. He's going to find his daughter. He gets his daughter, and then he's able to rescue her and leave. Greg figures out what's happening, and then basically we have Julie meeting up with Swagger and Mary, and basically we know at this point that they are planning to arrest Swagger for everything because he hasn't been cleared completely. And so Swagger's like, hey, Julie, Mary, you need to go to this motel. I'm going to try to resolve everything. If I'm not back by 12 midnight, you guys need to leave and save yourselves, basically, because they're going to keep coming after us unless I take care of this now. So they're at the motel. And we have the FBI, they're planning to basically figure out how they can apprehend Swagger. Johnson is making a play, and I think they prearranged all of this, but basically he ends up calling Greg to say, hey, you know, Swagger burned me. He said to meet him at Mason Park, whatever, he's going to be there. So Greg is now thinking, hey, we can ambush Swagger in the forest, the park, whatever. And then Greg actually is like, hey, you know, Mary ate a tracker. I know where she is, I'm going to her, and he's going to try to threaten the family for the annex to be filed. So we have a showdown in the park. We have the FBI heading there. The Russians are already there. They see Swagger's car because Swagger stepped up to meet them at a certain location, but because they saw his car, he was set up improperly, basically. So he had to adjust his plan on the fly. He is having to fight off 10 to 15 people by himself. He's able to kill them off one by one, but then he only had one bullet left and there's two people approaching him. And what's happening at the same time is that we have Memphis, Jackson and the Memphis's boss, and they basically have Johnson arrested because this whole time he's been involved in this government cover-up and he's been playing both sides to kind of get what he wants. And then what he wants at this point is he wants to be able to get enough money so that he and his wife can leave because he's tired of dealing with all of this nonsense. And so he's been arrested. He wants to help because they need another sniper. They're like, no, we can't. And then Memphis comes back and she feeds him. He's like, hey, you know, the goal is to protect Swagger. And so they set up in the forest. They're able to shoot one guy, but then they get shot. And so this just leaves Swagger to deal with one person. And just before he kills this final person, he made a really good shot because he was behind a tree trunk. There was a guy like right behind him on this side. He turned, the guy fired, and then you can see him doing calculations, and then he drops out on this side and he shoots the guy right in the forehead and then takes out that guy. So now he's down to the one person that he has to deal with. He's like, okay, I give myself up. I don't have anything. And his hands are like this. And he flings a knife at the guy and it ends up in his throat. And the guy's out of the picture. He's done for it. So it's just Swagger. And then we have Johnson trying to run off. And then Swagger gives him the diamonds. I don't know what happens with him from there. While they were in the forest and they were shooting at everybody and Swagger killed that last guy. So he gets a call from Julie at the motel and she's basically like, help, 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 right? And it's Greg there and he's basically after them for the Annex B files. He has a shotgun, she had a gun, but she is basically powerless in this situation. They don't have a means of escaping. There was a window, but she didn't go through it. So they're in the bathroom. She has Mary in the bathtub. She calls Swagger. Swagger has to figure out where he is in the forest. He ends up running to basically the line of sight of the motel and he's lining up to take a shot. And he is like 1,620 yards away and maybe a little bit more. And he's like, hey, Memphis, just fire, get his attention. And so Greg hears the shot and he thinks someone's firing at him. And this allows Swagger to line up a shot and kill Greg from 1,620 yards away, which is an insane shot because I was expecting him to like try to get in the car and drive to the motel, but he's like, hey, no, let me find out where he is, and he's prepared to take the shot from that far away, which is truly a bad A moment for this TV series. So then we go to everything else that I just mentioned, and that's why I want to leave it, because again, that speaks to how good Swagger is as a sniper. And then Memphis, they arrest him, they take him to prison. So this is where we have the epic scene at the end of the Shooter movie. So we know that Swagger was arrested, and then he's asked for this meeting. There's 3 people at this meeting. There's Johnson, then I think 2 or 3 other people. Memphis is there, and then Sarah's there, and he's basically like, hey, you know, Memphis, you trust me with your life, blah, blah, blah. He's asking all of these questions. He puts a bullet into the gun, he loads it, he fires off like, what, 5 or 6 shots, and nothing happens. And so what he reveals is that every time he uses his gun and he puts them away, he changes the firing pin so that you can't fire from the gun. So this proves that his gun was not the one that took the shot because it can't fire. And so this is what frees him. And then in the movie, what happens is Johnson's gloating about, hey, you can't touch me, you don't have any evidence on me, I win, you lose, blah, blah, blah. And then so we had that guy that Swagger asked to meet with. He's like, hey, you know, I don't like what happened here. You can't go out into the world and make your own justice or whatever, but that's exactly what's needed here. And so he basically is telling Swagger, hey, go kill those MFers and do what you gotta do. And so then we have Meacham in his mountain house, whatever, his cabin with Johnson. They're talking about the next thing that they're gonna do to make money. Somebody falls through the roof, they realize Swagger's there. Swagger shoots at Johnson, he shoots somebody else because he's under the house. He shoots that guy through the knee, he rolls under, and then he shoots another guy. Then the guy is begging for his life, he shoots him. Meacham is crawling on the floor, he gets in his chair, and he's like, I'm a sitting US senator, you can't kill me. He's like, exactly, and he fires a shot, and then he sets the house on fire. Shooter, the TV series ends differently. So we have that moment where he is arrested, he asks for a meeting, they empty out the CIA lobby floor or first floor to have that conversation because obviously they're discussing sensitive information. The lady, Miss Grigson, who is the national security advisor, Swagger's like, hey, you know, you're the person who tells the president who to meet with and where. You put the president there. And she's like, yeah, exactly. You're a smart one, whatever, whatever. She has the gun. She puts the bullet in there and she's holding it at Swagger. And Swagger's just like, okay, whatever. And then she presses the trigger and nothing happened. And this is where they reveal, hey, you know, somebody changed the firing pin. It's 2mm or something too short. The gun's not going to fire, you're free. Now, I gave you what you want, you give me what I want, which is the Annex B files. And so he tells her where to find the files, and then it goes to a meeting with that lady and Johnson. And basically what it sounds like is that Johnson was working undercover the whole time for the government, and he had to betray everyone that he loved, everything that he believed in order to help the government do this. So I'm not 100% sure if he was basically undercover the whole time or if he was supposed to be undercover and then kind of lost his way a little bit. They didn't speak on that, but they should definitely be covering that in season 2. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I really enjoyed the Shooter movie and the Shooter TV series season 1. I liked how they made this TV series different from the movie because, again, as I mentioned, you don't really want to watch the same thing twice. And I don't know how many people would have watched the movie like I did and then the TV series, and then if it was exactly the same, you may have gotten bored. So I do like the changes that they made to the TV series. And I'm not sure what the reception was of the TV series when it first came out. It came out in 2016. But again, I really liked it. I'm going to be watching season 2 to see what happens. And again, I don't know if I'm going to read any of the books, but I really do love political thrillers. And I love Shooter. It's a great movie. And this is a great season 1 for the TV show. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.